and welcome to the Power Within podcast. I'm your host, Laurie, and today I'm super excited to have Scott Bishop back on the show. Scott, thank you so much for being here again.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here. Thank you, Laurie, for asking.
No problem. I love talking to you because I learn so much from you, and there's a lot going on in the world, and I figured, with an election year, Scott is so versed in everything. I want to have him come back on. So the first thing that I want to talk to you about is, because you do know so much about government and the Constitution, everything, can you kind of break down, like, a lot of people are looking in the world at the presidential candidates as their saviors. But I know that you and I touched a little bit before on how it is so important for people to get involved in the lower levels of government, because those are really what control what happens higher up. So can you talk a little bit about that, like the importance of the lower level governments, what that means, and how that affects higher up?
That's a phenomenal question. So anybody who reads the Constitution or understands the founding documents should understand that the federal government is not the answer, nor should they be a nanny state. And we'll use the most recent example as Roe being overturned from the Dobbs decision and back to the states. Individual voters have more power to influence change within their own state elections than they do at the federal level, because all of the congressional representation and the president, they all work for the federal government, and there's not much they can do to influence states and states' laws. So that's one of the things I think people get hooked up on is, if I vote for a federally elected official, send them to Washington, D.C., things in my state are going to be better. And that's just a fallacy, because that's not how it's structured.
So with that structure-wise, so it's very important for people, so there's legislative, executive, and judicial branches, and a lot of people are like, well, then take it to the judicial branch and have the Supreme Court vote and do that. But your legislative, that is your lower levels. That's your House of Representatives, Congress, things like that. And so I know that a lot of people can start getting involved by trying to do state reps and things like that. So how would you tell people to get involved in the lower level of governments if they want to make change or see change happen?
Yeah, I think that most people, most everybody should, first of all, be rational about what they're thinking about. I revere the Constitution. We've talked about it before. And a lot of time people want to influence change that will affect constitutional law, maybe, infringe upon somebody's constitutionally protected rights. And the scary thing about that is that when you allow government to have that much power and influence, state, local, whatever it is, they don't tend to stop, right? Government officials, let's call them career politicians, whatever it is, governors in the states can be elected over and over and over, so on and so forth. They just don't want to give up the power. They like the control. So term limits is huge. I think every single state should have term limits within their own state's laws and their state's constitutions. And obviously it should filter up to Washington, D.C. But from a rational perspective of things, you have to ask, does it really make sense? What did the founding fathers say about it? You can interpret things differently, but anybody, again, who really understands, the Constitution doesn't grant individuals their rights. It's designed to prevent the government from taking away those rights. So, again, that's one of those things. And a lot of people, both sides, more recently than ever in the last 3 years, 7 years, whatever you want to call it, everybody is so emotionally charged that rational thought is tossed out the window because we're rooting for our ball team, whether it's a red cap or a blue cap. And it's a sad state of affairs, because we really should be focusing on the country and back to the we the people, and ensuring that government, state, local, and federal, are indeed subservient to us. that's how it was designed to work.
That's something that I've noticed a lot lately. And I actually was just having this conversation with my friend the other day. And I'm guilty of this for a long time. I used to be very I just always voted Democratic. That was it. That was my thing. And not understanding a lot about what that meant. And I've come to look at government now that I've looked at all the different sides, looked at different perspectives. And what I'm kind of finding now is that it seems like everybody is extremely left or extremely right. And you don't have a lot of people that are in the middle and who are looking at everything from a fair perspective or from a non-judgmental perspective of going, okay, what is best for the country? Not which party, because obviously every party has flaws.
Both
so
of them
is
are.
that something that you
Yes.
notice?
Yeah. It's interesting. A couple years ago, there was a situation in the New Hampshire State House where the governor was giving a speech, and a very prominently vocal and visible individual that I've become friends with on Facebook through social groups and things like that. She basically uttered a prayer, invoked God, whatever, and the governor, Republican governor, had her removed and arrested by state police. She had to go through all the court hearings and this and that, and she was ultimately found not guilty, and she's trying to indeed sue the state. But, if you're not being disruptive and you're responding, there's really no need for, and that's a power grab thing, right? And there's no accountability. No one's pushing back on that situation, either the police or the governor or whatever, to make right, make amends, acknowledge that they were wrong. And people are so politically charged right now, Laurie. And again, we go back to the rational thought of things. And I'm going to just hammer the Dobbs thing because it's important to me. I have a wife, I have a daughter. I do agree that a woman should have the right to choose and have access to abortion. The challenge is, with any of these big talking points politically, it's batted back and forth like a tennis ball. Nobody ever fixes it because the politicians that need to win elections don't ever want it fixed. Because if they fix it, they'll have nothing to politic and campaign on, And I think that this is where the rational conversation comes in. When you're actually looking at cause and effect and why, the people that agree with, let's say, Democrats who say, yes, a woman should have the right to choose. Okay, how do we protect it federally? And let's do that. And there's all sorts of arguments about how far it needs to go, this and that and everything else. But ultimately, if there can be some type of common ground, which I know there is, if it can be met, then it needs to be met and get it done and actually fix a problem. And I think that's us, state, local. We just had town elections in Litchfield. There was a budget item on the ballot for a new school, and it didn't pass. And not everybody, there are a lot of people upset, but people don't want to pay more in taxes when they have a school board that misappropriated $1.5 million in funds for the remodel on the middle school. They can't account, nor will they answer for it. And to me, that's unacceptable, right? You are elected, nominated, voted in to represent, and you have to be able to answer the people. I think that's hugely important, and I really don't believe that most people understand having to hold their elected officials' feet to the fire for answers and, being effective. If you and I aren't effective in our jobs, guess what's going to happen?
I think a lot of the problems that people have is that a lot of elected officials will...
Does that make sense?
Make a whole lot of promises and then they don't follow through with them. And, this is something that I've seen a lot in the world. So when I see any of the presidential candidates going, oh, well, when I'm elected or when I get reelected, I'm like, yeah, no, what have you followed through on your promises? And half the stuff that you're promising, you don't have the power to follow through on.
Right. And they think, well, not only do they not have the power to follow through on it, but they don't really have an idea on how to get it done. You know, the Dobbs thing, a really, really, really bad decision. You know, it was the state of Mississippi that perpetuated it all the way up to the Supreme Court. And Democrats could essentially codify a law and make it part of a constitutional right by just simply passing a single line item bill that says no state can ban access to abortion, right? Because that's essentially what Roe was, is like every single state had their own laws and rules about it, but no state could ban it. And it's really that simple, but I don't think that there's the common ground, the wherewithal, the wanting to put such a hot button issue to bed, because it's a useful tool in the toolkit, you know, and that's a sad state of affairs.
Yeah. And I kind of, a lot of the things with government too, I've kind of found myself where I'm like, I feel like the tools that they're using anyway is more divisive than it is coming together, because I feel like when they have everything in chaos and fear and divisive, they can control people more easily that way versus, you know, trying to really fix all of these big problems.
We're not going to lie about what COVID was. I mean, honestly, if you're going to sit back now and look at the information that's available to us, that's exactly what it was all about, a fear campaign. Because we're, 2-3 years removed for it, a full year removed from it. And, you know, the deaths really didn't creep up. We know that the CDC overcounted the deaths. We know that the vaccine wasn't nearly as effective as they said it was. It didn't prevent people from getting sick. It didn't prevent people from dying. And now COVID is gone. But a couple of years ago, we were told that the virus, a living organism, evolves to make it more resistant to drugs because it wants to survive. And every other week, it seemed like there was a new variant, and now it's gone. And are people actually paying attention to that, or are they just thinking, okay, we got through it, and the people who wanted the vaccine are right, and the people who didn't want the vaccine are right, and the other side is wrong? It's mind-blowing how nobody's able to sit back and take a look at these things. And I mean, it is prevalent every single day. You see it, the border, the fentanyl, right? The opioid crisis. If I hear one more political ad about somebody doing something for the opioid crisis, right? They're doing their best and fighting it. It's only gotten worse. It's not stopped at all. And one of the easiest things they can do to cut and tide the stem of drugs flowing into this country is close the border. Maggie Hassan just had a campaign. She's a federal senator here, she's a federally elected senator for the state of New Hampshire. She was talking about how it's going to take the work of the Chinese government and the Mexican government. And if anybody, again, really applies some logic to the situation, why does it take the Chinese government? Well, because a lot of the illegal fentanyl is being mass produced and manufactured in China. Why does it take the Mexican government? Because we understand that all of these illegal drugs are getting to Mexico through the cartels or whatever avenue, and then they are coming up through the southern border. So it's mind-blowing to me that such a big problem has what seemingly is such a simple issue. It could be fixed, but it won't be, because Democrats are afraid they won't get reelected if they close the border, vice versa. It's just a dang shit show, absolute shit show. And that's exactly what they do. They're using us as pawns. The automatic objection to the other side is disgusting and frustrating, and it is so broken, it's not even funny.
Yeah.
Not funny.
I agree. And I'm going to touch back. I'm going to come back to this topic because I know it's like a hot button topic right now. But I do want to go back to when you were talking about COVID. and, all of that. And what I think is so funny now is, well, it's not even funny, but all these people who pushed for all of these things, and then you've come out and you've found, and they've even talked about how, it's proven that some of these COVID vaccines, like, they've created a lot of health issues for people too. And these were pushed on people. And, now there's no one being held accountable for all the things that were done. So while they were slowly taking away people's rights and pushing that envelope, because the more you push and the people don't push back, it pushes that line further. And so,
Hmm.
I think for me, I still look at it and I'll still see stuff going on. And I'm like, how come no one is held accountable? It's kind of like silently, oh yeah, we were wrong. But let's not say it, let's not make this public, and let's make it quietly public. And that's my problem, is that
Yeah.
there's no accountability for any of these people who did this.
It's and a lot of people will argue that it was a choice, right? You work for a big corporation, whatever. You work in the healthcare industry. Well, you have a choice: get the vaccine or don't have a job. That's not really a choice. That's coercion. That's intimidation. That's
Yep.
that's an ultimatum. It's just not right, right? People wanted to know what are you forcing me to put into my body? Oh, well, we can't tell you that. And then like Pfizer, those big companies asked the government or judges to allow them to withhold the data that they have based on their testing for 75 years. I mean, that happened 2 years ago. Why wasn't that a big red flag to everybody? It's like, whoa, 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 what is in there that you're hiding and you want to not have to release it for 75 years when every generation, all the people of that generation are gone. So you don't have to worry about being held accountable because they're dead, right? They're just aged out. It's ridiculous. And the states and local governments who shut businesses down, destroyed families, all because they wanted the control, right?
Yep.
I mean, obviously, I think that if we had to actually see something to comply, it would have been an easier pill to swallow. But it just, the math didn't add up. Nobody was paying attention. Anthony Fauci changed his message almost weekly. Masks work, masks don't work. Got a double mask. The vaccine works. Oh, it doesn't work so good. You got to get boosted. You don't have to be this close. You can be that close. You can't get it this way. You can get it that way. It's just so much misinformation. And I believe it was intentional. I really think it was a pressure test. You hear about all these conspiracy theories about, globalists and world government and stuff. And realistically, with the United States having probably the highest population of any nation, with the exception of China, they had to pressure test to see what they could get away with and how many people would be compliant with their orders. And
Yep.
again,
And like
it's
you said,
not, goes back to the nanny state. The federal government is not the answer to keep you safe, right?
nope.
On an individual level, they're not the ones you should be turning to.
No, not at all. And that's the thing, like when you were saying, oh, there was a choice. And there wasn't. Like you said, a lot of people, it was take it or lose your job. Or, don't come to family dinners, or don't do this. And it was very, very divisive. And
Incredibly.
and I find that there's a lot of, like, there are some people now who have come back and said, oh, we were wrong about this. But I could see that division being put on people. And it really was, when COVID started, I remember how loving everybody was with everyone. Let's help each other. Let's do this, aside from everyone hoarding groceries. But
2 weeks, 2 weeks to flatten the curve. We can do this, blah, blah, blah. Right.
Yep. And then it turned into everyone's like, oh, you're selfish and you're a killer and you're this. And, and I think, like, it's easier now to say, okay, I don't agree with it. And a lot of people have. And I think it's, at this point, like, I'm not mad at anyone who said any of the things that they did. People didn't know at the time, and you can only know what you know when you know it, and then do better after. But I still find it
Yeah.
hysterical that none of these people were held accountable. And these pharmaceutical companies, I mean, they they have so much pull. So in these governments, and they own these elected officials, and that's why even Scott, even with the things that you eat and the things that you put in your body, like, um, why do we have situations where you have people who are buying foods that are um, with one ingredient? How come those things are more expensive than all the things that have 10 and 15? And I think a lot of it is
Right.
keep people unhealthy, keep people not, taking care of themselves.
I can't disagree with some of that. One of the things I'll reference, and I'm a conservative. I unfortunately begrudgingly support Trump, not for the person he is, but for the policies he brings to the country. I really believe, and I love the fact that he talks about giving the power of the government back to the people that they govern.
Hmm.
Um, the vaccine development. Everybody will recall that when it was being developed and Trump said he was going to deliver it in record time, there was a lot of doubt. There were in the media, they were casting doubt and saying he wasn't going to be able to do it. They don't happen that fast. He's lying. He's this. He's that. And then candidate Biden was questioning its efficacy. Who's going to take it? Are you going to take it? I'm not going to take it until I know what's in it, right? And everybody that was team blue said, yeah. Now, I had hesitancy regardless because I don't believe in a miracle drug whipped up in a matter of months. Questionable. But
Yeah.
as soon as Biden became president, everybody flipped the script and said, you got to jack me up with that Trump juice, please. Yes, I can't believe you're not getting it. What are you, crazy? I'm like, well, just yesterday you were questioning its efficacy, its quality, its safety. I have I just don't. A rational thinking person doesn't flip the script that way. It's all emotion, and it drives me crazy.
Yeah.
Drives me crazy. Everybody's like, there are a lot of people that say we should abolish the Second Amendment. Why? Well, because you don't need this, you don't need that. At the end, go back to the founding documents. It wasn't for you. It was to stop the government. And we should know by this COVID example, give the government an inch, they're going to take 3.5 miles.
Yep.
And anybody who wants to willingly give up their right to bear arms is willingly giving up the next one they come after. And we see it now, misinformation. We have to moderate free speech on social media platforms. Why in the fuck do they feel that they need to moderate anything? It's not their job. If I want to say, Laurie, I think that you could go out and hunt a purple zebra with a unicorn horn, and you can use this pea shooter to take it down. And you said, oh shit, okay. Or you could say, really? I don't think so. That's all it is. You're not protecting anybody except the narrative in which you want to maintain control by making sure that the message is delivered is the message you want delivered.
Yep. Yeah. And you're like, I'm seeing that too now, like, I think it's Canada, where they're trying to like make like hate, like things on social media be hate speech. I
Hate,
think it's either that. Yeah.
they have
And I'm,
legislated speech. Correct. If you are quote unquote violating the speech laws and you're persecuted or you've got a law put against you, you can be arrested. Like, and who determines what hate speech is? Again, who's
yeah.
the moderator of that truth?
It's very dangerous because it becomes, if I don't like what you say or I don't agree with you, then that's offensive to me and that's hate speech. And I think you see that a lot. And I feel like this generation or this time that we're living in, everyone is babies. Like they've gotten to be babies. You can't disagree with someone because you're going to hurt their feelings, and you can't say something because, oh, God forbid, not everyone agrees with you. Like, and there's no time for people to have these real, true conversations where they don't agree and they come together and they listen, and you may walk away and you may not understand or you may not agree, but you actually had those conversations respectfully, and that's what's
And,
missing. And so now we're going to put free, like all these rules and regulations and try to make it hate speech and silence people and let's ban people, and it's not right.
yeah, and it's not I'm right, you're wrong. It should be, okay, I didn't really understand your perspective, and now maybe I do a little bit more, right? I still could
Yep.
disagree with you, but at least we left each other maybe saying, okay, well, I maybe understand that thought process, right? Like, I understand the thought process of make guns illegal, it saves lives. Okay, but then when something happens and the government becomes tyrannical, how do you oppose them? You can't, because you willingly gave up your weapons. Same thing. They got weapons. Now they can come and say, well, we're going to arbitrarily search your home because we don't know if you're a safe person or not. And all of your neighbors question it. So now you get the violation of the Fourth Amendment. And they say, oh, by the way, we don't like the way you said things, so we're going to do this and do that. And everybody's okay with it because they feel good up until the point where it affects them. And
Yep.
then they're like, oh, holy crap, I was wrong. I never thought this would happen. Well,
Yep.
guess what? Because you didn't keep yourself based in reality and common sense. You can hate a certain amendment. You can hate the Constitution. You can hate specific aspects of the Bill of Rights. You can. But you have to respect them all equally. One, it's
Yep.
just like in the government, equal but separate branches of the government. One does not supersede the other. If you love one and you don't like the other, that's okay. But they're all there for a reason. It really is. I think we talked about this before. It's almost a perfect document, right? That and the Declaration of Independence is almost perfect. And I really do believe that they understood what they were doing when they drafted everything.
Yep. Yep. And if we go and give those rights away and those freedoms, you think the government's going to give them back to you at a later date? Oh no.
Well,
Once.
willingly.
Yep.
And Laurie, let me
Yep.
ask you a question. 2016, 17, the Me Too movement was very prevalent, right?
Hmm.
Brett Kavanaugh was accused of raping Christine Blasey Ford and this and that and everything else, and everybody was Me Too, Me Too, Me Too, right? Women need to be protected, this and that and everything else. Well, now, and we'll bring up the most recent case, there was a man in a woman's locker room at a Planet Fitness. There was a biological woman in said restroom, bathroom, shower area, whatever, and said, I really don't feel comfortable with you here. You're a man. That person said, well, no, I'm trans. So this person went to the front desk, made an argument, called the corporate office, this woman, and they canceled her membership and said she was no longer welcome because she wasn't inclusive. Again, how does it add up? Make it add up. Women need their own space. You cannot exclude, right? But a man who's got a penis and testicles, genetically, biologically a man, can have access to any woman's private space if he says, oh, I'm a woman. I don't understand how that makes sense to anybody,
No, and
right?
it's
If you're a woman, that's great. But there are some rules here with this whole scenario. Penis haver, right? You can't go into the women's locker rooms. You cannot compete against women in sports. You cannot indeed have a baby. You can't. Don't say that you can, because you can't, right? Like, this is
hmm.
all 5th and 8th grade science. We all learned this.
Yep.
And then you have professors of, it's anthropology and biology and saying, well, no, you're not really able to tell the difference between a woman's skeleton and a female skeleton. This is anthropologists. This is what they know. This is the science developed on this information. And now they're saying, no, we really can't tell. I'm like, are you effing kidding me? It's not.
Yeah.
It's not the virtue that you think it is. You're making yourself look stupid, and you're changing definitions. And it blows my mind. I'm going to go again. State of Massachusetts. A year ago, Boston Children's Hospital had videos about their gender affirming care program for geriatric or for pediatric patients. Right? I'm going to say it again. Boston Children's Hospital had videos promoting gender affirming care for pediatric patients, whether it be endocrinology and giving them puberty blockers, giving them hormones, surgical 15-year-olds having double mastectomies because they felt like they're a boy. Okay? Unconscionable to me, because you don't
Mm-hmm.
know what you're doing to that kid. Oh,
Mm-hmm.
but they know. They know. At 15, that young girl knows. Okay, great. This past year, 2 months ago, Massachusetts is attempting to pass a law that would prohibit 18, 19, and 20-year-olds, criminals, from being prosecuted as adults because their frontal cortex is not fully developed until they're 26 years old.
Yep.
That's the same state that's telling you that a 15-year-old knows that he or she is the opposite gender of which she was born, and you're going to allow this person to surgically mutilate themselves, and then what? In 10 years, what do they do? Like, who's held accountable? Are their parents held? I mean, massive amounts of mental illness, massive amounts of self-harm, massive amounts of who knows what. And it's just so based in bullshit, and it's being allowed to happen in droves, and there is a sector of the population that is okay with it,
Yeah.
right? Why does it
Yeah.
affect you? It's not
But
individualism. It's like it's a goddamn collective.
yeah, and the problem is that you have, like people need to protect children and innocence, and a lot of like there's like studies. I think there was like a documentary. I watched it and I can't remember the name of it right now, but talking about like people who had these type of things and they're suffering now and they wish that they'd never done it. And the thing is that, like you said, you have rules that you can be an adult, but then you're not. And then you can't do this and you can't do that because your brain's not functioned. Why are
It boils
we?
down to, right, parent your child. Parent your child. You're not to be their best friend. You're their parent. Sometimes
Mhm.
you have to make really tough decisions. And these doctors, these educated doctors saying, yeah, okay, this 10-year-old's coming in and he thinks that he's a girl, so I'm going to give him hormones and puberty blockers to block and prevent what nature says should happen from happening. In 15 years, when this kid's 25, God forbid he becomes a homicidal maniac because why the fuck did you let me do this to myself? I was 15 years old. I was 10 years old. I had no clue what I was doing. And you
Mhm.
said it was okay. You supported me? Are you insane?
Yep.
Like a 10-year-old says, I want to get a face tattoo. No, I don't think that's going to happen. That's the same level of parenting. No, not going to happen.
Yep. And
If I
even
need
in
you to
the
get
like,
to, go ahead.
go ahead.
If you have to get to a talk doctor, right? The massive need in psychological and psychiatric help. We don't have enough providers. But that's what I'm saying is like, all right, there's something amiss here with this child, whether they're falling into the culture, whether they're being influenced, whether they have a chemical imbalance, whatever it is, it's not normal for a 10-year-old boy or a 10-year-old girl to come to their parents and say, I feel like I'm this. And then the parent says, yeah, okay. And you hear it as young as like 18 months. Oh, we knew at 18 months that, our son was a girl. What the fuck? 18 months old, the kid wants to play all day. They don't give a shit. And because, I
Yeah.
mean, a little boy plays with a doll or wants to wear a dress and play princess, and they're like, oh, he must be trans. Like, they're a kid. They have no clue.
Yeah. And even as you get older, Scott, like you were talking about in in competitions, there is a difference between men and women's bodies. And there is an unfair competitive, uh, um,
Advantage.
there is, yeah, there, men, especially in like water sports and stuff like that. I mean, look, you can see like there's times where men are faster than women or women are faster than men. And so if you put someone in there and then they're winning all the awards, you know, what are you doing? Because it's not. I mean, there's two genders. There's male and
That,
female. You
and
know.
that's the thing, Laurie. And you know why that happens? You know why, like, it happens in every animal species, almost every animal species, if you look at it, right? The male of the species typically is physically bigger and stronger than the female of the species. That's by design, right? That's nothing but by design. And then you look at Riley Gaines, worked her life off to compete at the highest possible level. And then at the collegiate level, when she realized she wasn't going anymore, this was the end of her athletic career. They let a man, biological man, who was physically stronger than her, compete against her, and all of her efforts were dashed upon the rocks because this person was a split hair faster. And they all said,
Hmm.
well, she needs to suck it up. She should have won. She wasn't the fastest one. I'm like,
Yeah.
guys, what do you, like, it just, you see me, Laurie. I'm a big dude. That's like me and you going at it. And I'm like, all right, Laurie, we're going to wrestle. And whoever loses is obviously the weaker of the two individuals. And you're like, there's no fucking way. That's fair. Right? I don't know. You're pretty strong. I don't want to mess around with you. But you understand the premise.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
The world's just
It's
so
insane.
crazy
It's
right now.
so frustrating. And it's so frustrating. And we could talk about current events and the unequal application of the laws and Hillary Clinton. Nobody's above the law. They're saying Trump, nobody's above the law. All right. Well, you could dig into what laws he violated and what laws are being pushed up against him in regards to the civil case in New York. Right. But here's one of my huge beefs. And again, it goes back to it's an emotional reaction, not anything based in reality. Candidate Hillary Clinton said that she did not have an illegal email server. I'm not talking about the emails, right? Everybody's, oh, but her emails. Listen, she said she didn't have an illegal email server. She did. She said she didn't use it for any state business. She did. She said she didn't send anything that was confidential or critical. She did. She lied about it all. She destroyed evidence. She got caught. And then the FBI said, well, she was really just careless. I'm like, wait a second. You're acknowledging the fact that she lied about an email server, lied about what was sent, confidential classified documents. And then she said during the hearings, she really didn't know. She didn't know. She was the former Secretary of State. Who else would know or should know that the information you're sending is classified and or confidential? And then the FBI said, well, she also used it while she was flying on international trips and stuff, and we really don't know which bad actors might have been able to disseminate that information. I'm like, what? What? But yet, she was the best candidate to be president of the United States. So, uh, uh, what?
Double standards.
I don't, again, rational thought. Show me a crime, and okay, the crime is she lied about this. She lied about it. She got caught. They said she lied about it. But everybody that wanted to vote for her was like, well, who cares about what was in her emails? I'm I don't care about the content of the emails. I care about the fact that she lied about having an email server and what she used it for. People, she
Yeah.
knew what she was doing. It's
Yep.
crazy to me. Just remain based in facts. Please remain based in just actual facts. Try to take the emotion out of it. I know it's tough, but look at it for what it is in face value. Please. We're destroying our own country because of the stupidity, the vitriol, the level of emotional. It's insane to me, Laurie. I'm really, really concerned about the status of our country and where it's headed. Right? I agree. I want every immigrant that wants to be here to be here. We use the argument, oh, well, Ellis Island and this and that. Yes, immigrants built the country. And when they came from Europe, when we had mass migration from Europe, every one of them went through a legal authorized port of entry, Ellis Island. They were all documented. They were all accounted for. They all wanted to participate in society. They wanted to stand up and be recognized, and they wanted to be American citizens. That was their dream. I want to be an American. I want to set it up for my family so they can take advantage of every opportunity that the United States has to offer. At the southern border, not so much. We so need to fix that, and then we so need to overhaul our immigration policies, but they go hand in hand, and you have to put one before the other. You have to secure the border. You have to physically stop the mass migration and the importing of illegal drugs and child sex traffickers. And I'm sure there are a lot of good people. Absolutely. But that's not our system. Those are not the laws of our land. Fix it, stop it, and then look back at the immigration policies. Republicans oppose the bill. Democrats are upset because they really, quote unquote, don't care about the border. Common sense, in my opinion, says, well, he wants to add federal employees, government border agents, technology, this and that, and everything else. Do you know what that does? It just adds to the burden, financial burden of the federal government. Because with a border wall, it's static. It's there, right? You don't have to worry about health insurance, pensions, benefits, all of that stuff that comes with more federal employees. And that's what border agents bring, right? Of course you need some human interaction. But if you can funnel everybody to a port of entry and sift through them and tell them you have to remain in Mexico until your court hearing, but we're going to hear you and we're going to give you an equal opportunity, that's what this country is all about. Not people sneaking in and disappearing into the system. And again, never being held accountable. The federal government talks about, oh yeah, no, these people will have notices to appear, but they can't find them. How the hell do they get them to appear in court when their court hearing is up when you can't find them?
You know, Scott, and another thing with that, like, you know, there's been, obviously, you know, that violent people have gotten through. Like, it's not, you know, I am like you. If you want to come in, yeah, sure. You know what? Just do it the way you're supposed to. Come on in, join in. And I think that the problem is right now too, is that, and the thing that I have a problem with is that there is so many people in this country right now, our own citizens, who cannot afford to eat, cannot afford a roof over their head. They are homeless. They can't even manage or get by.
Yes.
But then we're just taking in hundreds of thousands of people. The government's giving them thousands of dollars, putting a roof over their head, doing that. We have our own people who are in a bad way. And I know, like, New Hampshire's seen more of it with people. The rents are out of control. The food is out of control. It is almost impossible to live. You cannot, at this point, unless you make really, really good money, as a single person, you cannot live on your own anymore. It is impossible. Right. The cost of living is way too high. So
and
we have military veterans who are homeless. We're not even taking care of our own, and we're bringing in all these people. You know, and I have a huge problem with it. Like, you know, I just did my taxes and I owed thousands of dollars. And I'm like, oh man, I got to pay that. Like, but I'm like, that's what they give to people for free. Just come on in. And I'm like, there's something wrong with this system. And I think people look at people in a bad light because they're shedding light on there's a huge problem within our own country right now without taking in a whole bunch of people and giving everything to them for free.
That's a wonderful point. And this is where I don't know if it's the emotion or whatever comes into it, right? So the argument for abortion, who realistically, whether you agree with it or not, right? It's a necessary evil. I don't get it, but I think that people that are responsible realize they need an abortion because they're not ready financially, emotionally, or whatever. I get it. I get it. Okay, it happened. Let's try to make sure it doesn't happen again until you're ready, right? The people who say, oh my, I've had 5, 6, 12, 15 abortions, I'm like, you're a disgusting individual. You're not taking any responsibility for yourself. But who wants thousands and thousands of unwanted children in the United States? I don't want to see a child who was brought into this world because of a law that prevented a woman from accessing abortion now is being raised in what? Foster home. They're a ward of the state. That's a burden on taxpayers. That's a burden on everything, right? Everything. And a lot of people, I mean, what you were just talking about, taking care of our own and this and that and everything else, I think that is one of the biggest things that I personally can take away from the MAGA movement is America first, right? I'm not saying no to everybody else, but we have to fix the shit that's broken here. And
Yep.
of course, Trump couldn't do it in 4 years. What president, with the amount of division in D.C. at the legislative level, what president could fix it in 4 years? 8 years, 12 years. I mean, it's been decades sliding into the demise. And you can't undo everything just like that. There are people who need the help and services, and I am all for it. There are also people who take advantage of the systems. Those are the people that need to be removed from it. But you can't flip a switch. It takes a monumental effort of years and years and years to fix it. And we're just so disinterested in fixing it as a population and as legislators that are at the state and or federal level. They just don't want it fixed. It's all going their way. While you've got a Democrat and a Republican probably sitting back having a cocktail, laughing about how divisive everything is, and they're thinking, this is so great, we're going to be on this gravy train for as long as we want to. Because guess what? Who makes the rules? We do. As Congress people, we're not going to pass a constitutional amendment to implement term limits in Congress. Why would we do that? Why would I sell myself short? But then they're going to
Yep.
come out the door and say, Laurie, I'm fighting for you. I want the absolute best for you.
Yeah. No,
Bullshit. It's
it's all a crap.
bullshit. And people, you got to let the emotion go and just see it for what it is. If there was somebody other than Trump that could have the policies and deliver them, not Ron DeSantis, somebody that was as charismatic, but not such a blowhard, by the mouth, asshole, arrogant SOB, right? I hate the fact that that's my choice, him or Biden. And I think Biden is a complete socialist. I think that the whole green energy, nobody looks at that. Common sense, right? Oh, we need electric vehicles. Let's talk about the production and how big of a carbon footprint that leaves behind. And when you have a strip mine, a lithium mine that they have gutted, and there's no more lithium, you have 3 mile wide, 3 mile across, 4.5 mile deep pit, they're not filling back in. That's a giant scar on the earth. Oh, and by the way, they used massive pieces of diesel gobbling equipment to mine that machine, to mine that precious metal, that mineral, to create this battery that you can't recycle.
Yep.
Why aren't we pushing fuel economy standards on gasoline burning engines. It just get me all fired up, kid. The
Well,
Stop
I
Oil protesters. Stop Oil protesters. They show up in the streets to block traffic with their nylon orange vests and their black plastic sunglasses and their rubber shoes and their backpacks. And do these people not necessarily understand exactly how all of that exists? And what type of society do you have if you stop using fossil fuels? Right? The microphone that you're using right now doesn't exist. The cell phones that we're using right now, they don't exist. The cotton clothing, the jewelry that you have on your neck, whatever hair product and makeup you've used, none of that exists without fossil fuels. And people just seemingly don't get it. They'll show up to protest in a vehicle or a bus, rubber tires, plastic everything, sheet metal. It's mind-blowingly ignorant to me.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I know that you got to go, so I just want to ask you one final thing, and that
Yeah.
is, as it's being an election year, what would be the thing that you want to leave people with to think about for the upcoming elections?
I think that the biggest thing right now is the economic health of every single household. I think that, policies are challenging, but everybody's pocketbook is suffering right now. And I think a lot of it is due to domestic policy. I know that the President of the United States can't do much abroad, but I think that you see it now. Gas prices are creeping back up. Food has remained at all-time highs. And like you said, everything is so expensive. And we really need to hammer down on what's best economically for the people of the country. If you want green energy, that's great, but you got to slow it down. You can't accelerate it and jam it down everybody's throats. You look at the state of Massachusetts, they've banned all gas appliances, and it's just adding to the level of frustration and wear and tear on people's mental, physical, financial well-beings, and it's just not right. I need the government to get out of my pocketbook and out of my house. That's what
Yep.
we need. Get the fuck out of the way. We're not the greatest country on earth because of politics and the federal government. We're not. We are the greatest country on earth through private enterprise and capitalism and people wanting things to be better. Right? And you look at the world, Laurie, every country in the world, every established, industrialized country is so much younger than the United States. And everybody looks at us and says, holy shit, look at that. Wouldn't it be cool if we had that? And it's through nothing but innovation, drive, perseverance, wanting it. The federal government doesn't do dick except create taxes and heartache.
Yeah.
So
that's another conversation for another time.
Yeah, pay attention to your checkbooks. Please, everybody, just let's use common sense about it. You don't have to like Trump. You don't. The guy is an egotistical maniac and an asshole. But from his last 4 years, I truly believe that he, A, loves this country and believes in it. What billionaire, private citizen would continuously put themselves through all of the shit that the media and the government put him through if he didn't care? I wouldn't do it. I would be like, I'm just going to take my millions and tell you guys to go fuck off. But that's not what he's doing. And there's a reason for it. And nobody that opposes him can sit back and say, boy, you have a point. Why does he let him go through that? He's not a career politician. He's at the highest level of government. He's got one more term and then he's done. He'll never hold another office. Why would he look to? He's not going to go to Congress or anything like that. But he consistently allows and exposes his own self. For what purpose? It's not personal gain. He's got enough. Believe me, he's got enough.
Yep. Oh, thank you so much for this, Scott. I appreciate you coming back on.
We're going to do this again. I love it.
We will. We will.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Great talking to you.